Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Doctor and his good old-fashioned doppelganger as they travel the Vortex and arrive at episode number 305, where first things first, but not necessarily in that order. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
And this week, the part of Glenn will be played by Barry White. I'm Glenn.
Hi, Barry.
He looks a little prickly, almost like he's been taken over by a cactus.
Yeah, it's...
my doppelganger here.
How are you guys? It seems like an odd question to ask.
Once again, I'm in recovery. This is twice in a month. Thanks, 2016.
And this is recovery from something different.
Yeah, this is completely different, because last time was a stomach bug. Now this is all chest and cold, so...
If Glenn sounds a little muffled, we have him sequestered from the rest of the table, wrapped in plastic.
Sectioned off is the bubble boy.
I cannot deny I'm sitting here with no small amount of slight satisfaction. It wasn't me.
Well, as you said last time, you got the shot, so that would have prevented this.
No, I just like you being uncomfortable.
Oh, thank you.
Did you have a decent week before you got sick?
Yeah, I don't remember. It's been all a fuzz, but I did see Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Did I say it right this week?
You did.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I keep calling it every other thing. And I don't know that I could give it a fair review, because my initial thoughts were it was really, really slow starting, and there's a lot of fun moments in it, but overall, I didn't think it was all that great. I mean, it was fine. It was nice that they used the Harry Potter trappings. You know, you're in that universe, but it's a completely different story, and it does interconnect some of the backstory. But it seemed scattered, and it seemed not well put together. The acting was good, but I wonder how much of that is I was already starting to get sick on Sunday, and I was feeling bad already while we were there at the theater watching it. So I don't know how much I think it's one of those ones I'm going to have to rewatch and say, okay, so for what it is, I think it's fine. I didn't hate it. It was good.
The reviews I saw were very similar. While they had a lot of fun watching the movie, there were issues and a lot of the same things you brought up.
It's probably a valid point.
And it sounds like a lot of that is because it's J.K.'s first actual screenplay that she's written.
So she actually wrote the screenplay.
Yeah.
I know she wrote the story, because
I think
it says
both.
written by, but I didn't see the screenplay by.
Yeah, I think I saw that it was both. So
anyway, it's got an underlying story, but it's just a lot of fun chasing down. There's funny moments, and that's pretty much what the whole movie is comprised of. Is fun and funny moments. So I don't know that makes a good film, but I had fun watching it, I guess.
When it comes down to it, that's one of the most important things. So long as you have fun watching it.
What'll happen is we'll get 4 more of them, and in the 5th one, all of those fun little funny moments will suddenly tie together and become a massive plot thing, and you'll go, oh.
Or it'll be a last-minute plot thing like Horcruxes.
I think they'd have to. Yeah, I think they'd have to really have to tie in the beasts, because it's really running around catching beasts is what it is.
So it's like a Harry Potter Pokemon.
Yeah, kind of. Except for Newt is responsible for the beasts getting out in the first place. So I don't know. Anyway,
so not quite.
So this really just came about because the Harry Potter series wrapped up, and there were just a bevy of English actors who were a little upset that they hadn't been in one yet. And
except it comes over to America for most of the movies.
That's the weird part of it.
The only part of that statement that was true was Harry Potter had wrapped up. The rest of that was Warner Brothers said, "How can we continue to make money?
How can we make money off this?"
Well, apparently Eddie Redmayne did audition for Tom Riddle, and didn't get the role. So some of that is true. Eddie Redmayne wanted to be in Harry Potter.
He's uneasy. He's an uneasy character in this to watch, but he does it so well.
He's a really good actor, despite Jupiter Ascending.
It's uneasy.
Why is everybody got to pick on that one?
He was even chewing the scenery in that one. It gets props for attempts, but
his role's uneasy in a good way. Don't get me wrong. It's not like you're going to sit there going, "Oh gosh, I can't believe I'm watching this guy." He's awkward, and I like that. It was well done.
No, that's good.
Did
you go see it?
I didn't.
We didn't get to go see it either.
I'm still behind. I want to go see Arrival, and
I want to see that too.
That one either.
I watched Now You See Me 2, That is the quintessential empty sequel. It lost all of its heart. It lost all of its magic somehow. It became a stupid heist film that wasn't very good.
See, I still enjoyed it, but I mean, I agree with you. I don't think it had quite the magic of the first one. But
it was just, all right.
Like, I even kind of went into it with a little lowered expectations,
So
going,
did I,
I don't
but
think
it
you can be as good as surprising as the first one was, and I still enjoyed it. But
Yeah, it was, yeah. Then we watched The Nice Guys, which I really enjoyed. Not as great as Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I think the overall story isn't as good, but the chemistry between Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling is on par with Val Kilmer and Robert Downey Jr. It is, just on that aspect of alone, it's totally worth watching. It's really good. It's really funny. Yeah, a lot of fun. And then Christmas shows up at the end. So. I forgot that you had mentioned
waiting for it,
and I was waiting
for it.
and I thought, well, this isn't set at Christmas. Oh, all right.
Oh, there it is.
And then we watched Warcraft, which was okay. It wasn't that great, but it wasn't horrible either. The justifications of the bad guy don't seem very fleshed out. Yeah, I don't know.
This is the video game.
Yeah, based off of World of Warcraft and Warcraft. It just seems, and the way it unfortunately it ends feels like it doesn't feel like a complete movie. It feels like they're setting up a bigger universe and sequels. And if it had been a standalone movie and then we got a sequel, I might have felt a little differently about it. But it was just kind of okay, and then I don't get a good enough resolution to make me want to continue.
Well, the good news for the people that want to see more, it did really well overseas.
Yeah, that's what I was telling Sarah on that.
It will
it
undoubtedly
bombs
get
here,
a sequel.
but it may come out on DVD here, but at least in theaters over there. Yeah, I think that's been all I watched.
We watched Money Monster.
Oh, the George Clooney movie.
which was good. It was a very. I found it predictable. You know, it was like as soon as it starts and they kind of set up, this is what we're doing. It's like, oh, I know who the bad guy is here. It's this guy. You know, and it was, but it was an enjoyable flick. And there was something else that we watched, but I'll be honest, I can't remember now what it was. So continuing on with Next Gen and all those other fun asides that we do. So.
Well, let's move on to news then. BBC America aired Power of the Daleks on Saturday.
Yay!
Episode 1.
Episode 1.
Boo!
We talked about this a little bit last week, or Sean touched on it with the schedule, but it slipped under our radar for the most part that it was going to be weekly, and that seems like a huge...
I still think they changed it.
I know. I'm pretty sure they did at some point and just didn't announce it. But if you do have a cable subscription, you can watch online if you missed it, and you can watch the color version is available now already. If you have a cable subscription.
Of episode 1.
Of episode 1.
And it did drop day and date on iTunes, so you can download it if you have the season pass on iTunes, which should have been an indicator to me when I pre-ordered. It said season pass. It didn't say pre-order. But, so if you have iTunes, and I think even... probably, I presume, if you bought it through Amazon or Voodoo. Is Voodoo the other one that's offering it? Somebody else was offering it too.
Pretty much everyone's offering it. Even
probably
Google is offering it.
Yeah, so you probably get one episode at a time that way too. But I can verify that iTunes episode 1 has dropped. I haven't seen if the color one has dropped yet, but because just the black and white was on there the other day.
The color one has not dropped for Amazon at least, so I don't know. Last time I looked, it wasn't on iTunes
It's
either.
likely not on iTunes then. But the black and white version is on there, so. Apparently, we'll get those as they go. Those of us that don't have BBC America right now, there's no reason to pay for BBC America right now when there's no Doctor Who on.
Nope. So I'm a little disappointed that BBC America decided to air it in that format. It doesn't seem to make sense or have as much staying power as I would like to think it would, to come back week after week for a classic episode like this.
Yeah, I'll tip my hand a little bit. I watched the first episode. I quite enjoyed it. I enjoyed the animation, but I'm also used to the style of animation because it's very much in the same vein as the other animated. It's not. There's no no wow factor there like I expected there would be.
Although I watched part of it, and that console shot of the rotor is
Yeah,
pretty
there's
impressive.
some good shots in there, but I'm consistently
Overall,
throughout it, it's
yeah.
still that computer animated, real stiff walking figures, and I'm afraid that by the BBC America doing this, I don't know that's going to appeal to your average viewer, and so doing it a week at a time might even drag that agony out for some people. In fact,
Yeah.
there might be people that came to the first one that aren't fans like us, that came to just your average viewer that came to the first one and may not come back. I don't know.
Yeah, I would think the same thing, especially in those who had got to go see it in the theater, then to have to wait week to week to rewatch it. I mean, maybe they would be more inclined because they've seen it already, and so they know kind of more what's happening. But I would imagine that, especially knowing how these cliffhangers are in the classic era, those sort of cliffhangers don't work in today's society, unfortunately. Television is made differently now, and you can't expect people to come back week after week for the same situation. Even when BBC America airs other classic Who, they air it in a lump. So I don't know.
I just feel I think people's attention spans have gotten so truncated that you can't expect a 25-minute episode from 50 years ago to still hold that same staying power over the course of a week today. It would be different if they were airing it night by night.
Yeah.
And I would come back the next night to see what, because then I'm only committing a week to it, as opposed to, wow, I really have to block off the rest of the year to be able to finish this thing.
Literally, because if they don't skip Christmas Eve, it ends that day.
I think what happened is they just had a half-hour hole in the schedule from something that ended, and they didn't have the next thing ready to go until January when, shows typically start, and they went, what can we do? Hey, we've got Doctor Who. Throw that in there. We'll plug the hole.
And I didn't watch it on BBC America, but I presume that it probably airs with commercials,
I would assume so, too.
That's going to even kind of slow that down a bit, too.
Unless they
Which I am fine
Unless they
with.
did the smart thing and did a lump of commercials at the beginning and the end.
Right. I mean, it's commercial. Yeah, that would be a better idea. But I mean, it's commercial television, and even though we pay for cable when we get BBC America, I understand that that's how they make a lot of revenues. In fact, those commercials that play on BBC America, you could probably thank for Power of the Daleks getting made as an animated film, because BBC America put a lot of money into that. So. That being said, did either of you guys get a chance to go see the theater version?
I did not.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
I really wish now I had.
Well, other bits of news. Some new Series 10 writers were announced over the past week, and they confirmed that classic series writer is Rona Munro, who wrote Survival, is coming back.
Yay!
Yeah. So that's exciting. And then Jamie Matheson is coming back to write another episode for Series 10.
Yay!
We all liked his stuff, so. Rona Munro's episode is called The Eaters of Delight.
Ooh. It's a Ghostlight sequel.
If it were Mark Platt, I'd believe it.
I figured, what's his name or what's her name? Is it a woman that wrote Survival?
Yeah.
What's the name? Okay.
Rona Munro.
I have a feeling she's going to figure out some way to pick up where Survival left off. So.
I think that would be really
Some
awesome.
clever way. That would be neat.
And our last bit of news is Big Finish announced they may release for the Unit series called Assembled, and it is classic series and new series Unit in one story. So, in addition to Gemma Redgrave and Ingrid Oliver, Joe Jones is coming back, Katie Manning, as well as John Benton and Mike Yates, played by John Levine and Richard Franklin.
Just Joe Grant Dash Jones. Joe
I guess Joe Jones
/
was what she was called in the Sarah Jane Adventures, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, she married
got married,
that guy, Well, she married him right after the Green Death.
Yeah.
It's
still weird to hear.
And then Jago and Lightfoot, did I see that?
I did not see that
okay.
one. But
I thought I saw them on something. I thought, how are they going to do that? But it's like different
let me
era.
look.
It's like a completely different era.
Yeah.
But,
Just for the record, Voodoo does have it available, Power of the Daleks, but it's episode 1.
Okay.
I'm very excited by the unit news. I saw that
exciting.
photo and was like, oh, that's cool.
It took me a second to... I actually read the release and saw Katie Manning, and then I had to go back to the picture and go, oh, yeah, that is her. I'm so used to seeing her young that it's jarring almost. It's so exciting, though. And they've done a really good job with the unit story so far. So
You've been listening to
I've listened
right?
to the first 2. I've not listened to the third one yet. Either that or the third one has not come out. I'm not entirely sure. The Silence one hasn't come out yet. I know for sure. But
when are we going to put those on the schedule? I'm excited for those.
yeah.
Soon.
No spoilers, huh?
And I just saw...
You want them on the schedule? We appear to have a 2-week hole with Power of the Daleks. So. How's next week sound?
The Fourth Doctor has also joined the Classic Doctor's New Monsters Volume 2 box set, Knights of the Vashta Narada.
Ooh.
I just saw this news. I had not seen it previously.
It's one of my favorite new series monsters with one of my favorite doctors.
Yeah, that's
it's gonna be
exciting.
good.
And having listened to the entire first box set, they do a really good job of that too. So they know
When are we
what they're
going to
doing.
put the Classic Doctor's New Monsters on the schedule, Sean?
We happen to have a 2-week hole in the schedule.
We've now stuffed the 2-week hole so full we cannot
We've got
get
3
through it
weeks
all.
worth of stuff. Well, that's it for news. All the news that's fine to print. Let's move on to our review of Meglos.
Dun, dun. Oh, I'm sorry.
On Tigella, 2 opposing...
What? For real?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, go ahead. We're getting ahead of ourselves here.
On Tigella, 2 opposing factions are irrevocably divided over one fundamental issue. The dodecahedron, a mysterious artifact which provides the entire planet's energy. With the Savants and the Dions locked in a crippling stalemate and their civilization on the brink of collapse, the Tigellan leader Zaster seeks the Doctor's help. But the Doctor and Romana have been trapped aboard the TARDIS in a time loop by Meglos, the last of the Zolfa Thurans who will stop at nothing to steal back the awesome power of the dodecahedron.
Was that it?
Doesn't seem like enough, but that's okay. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's it. That's it.
Dun, dun, dun.
I'm a little surprised, Sean, that you liked it because you kind of were telegraphing for weeks on end that you didn't think you were going to like it. And you did say last week you didn't remember anything.
I didn't remember much. I remember as a kid that the Doctor turned into a cactus. I remember there
But he doesn't.
I remember there were carnivorous plants. And that's about it, really. I mean, that's I think the gist of it. And I remember not liking it as a kid, either because it was scary or dumb, one of the two. That it just, and this one did come late enough in the game that I was, like you, kind of starting to move out of the Who phase for a little bit, you know. So I was really kind of intrigued. I know fandom doesn't particularly care for this one all that much, it seems like. But
Well, it's almost one of those run-of-the-mill stories. It's very Doctor Who of showing up and this planet faction between the religious sect and the scientific sect. I mean, the thing that stands out that's different about it is Meglos himself.
yeah.
I was thoroughly confused throughout the entire first episode, aside from when Romana and the Doctor were on screen. I had no idea what was going on or what was happening or what people were even talking about. I'm going to blame some of that on exhaustion from working overnights.
I think too. This is, you maybe can start to see the trend into the Fifth Doctor's era, where we have those stories that seems like don't really focus on the Doctor for very much initially.
Yeah.
This feels more like one of those stories than maybe a traditional Tom Baker episode would. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was a little bit all right. It's like you said, it's not the greatest. It's kind of a standard run-of-the-mill story. Maybe my expectations are a little colored because I really expected not to like it.
I didn't have as much fun as I thought I would watching it, considering the Doctor is covered, or Tom Baker is covered in a cactus.
I just the plot moved along. In fact, we got to when I was typing and now the conclusion before going into the fourth part of Friday Night Who. It was like, oh wow, we're already like we're already done.
Some of that, at least for me, is coming off of Inferno and some of the longer stories where we're breaking them up into 2 weeks. Going back to where we're done in a week, it's always like, oh yeah, that's over. All right. At least for me, anyways.
I think we should sandwich a 7-parter on either side of like Black Orchid.
That was fast.
But no, I just.
I thought the effects in it were pretty good, too.
The effects were good. I think there's a lot of missteps in this story. I think the fact that we bring back Barbara, well, not Barbara, what's her name?
Jacqueline.
You're talking about the character, it's Jacqueline Hill, but
Jacqueline Hill,
Lex
thank you.
is the character's name.
Yeah, I think she was kind of wasted. Unfortunately, she wasn't.
Killed off kind of early, too.
Yeah, and for no apparent reason.
Yeah.
Which was a little disconcerting. But they're just
no, I thought she had the most noble death because she's the one that saved Ramada, even after she was the one that was pushing back against all of the technology and all of the doctor helping and all that. And then even when it's discovered that the doctor's Meglos, she still has, that Meglos is pretending to be the doctor, she even still has a little bit of that skepticism because she's so adherent to the religion. And for her to recognize that she needs to save Romana when Romana's, being fired upon, I think it was the most noble death. I loved it. I absolutely love that character. I think that was the most growth in a character in this story as well.
But there was really no reason to put Romana in danger at that point, other than to kill the character off. It was kind of. I don't know. It's
the reason you kill the character off is to show that she's gone to the point to sacrifice for our heroes. I mean, there's a point for it in the story from the story point.
It seemed self-serving. It seemed like
okay. I'll give you that. I'm too sore to argue, so.
Yeah, I got one. Daleks suck. Cybermen rule. Go ahead, argue with me, Glenn.
I think that, of course, I've made no. Can't even think today either. I haven't been secretive of the fact that I like this story. I remember watching this as a kid, and I didn't remember very much of it. I watched it recently. When I say recently, I think within the last 2 years or so, and I still liked it a lot. And even this viewing, it loses nothing for me. I think this time I was able to, and there were pieces of it that I kept misremembering too, even from having watched it just a few years ago. One of which being, for some reason kept thinking that it was the doctor that got possessed, as you did as well.
I totally thought the doctor got possessed by the cactus.
And so when it started, I was like, oh yeah, that Meglos is pretending to be the doctor. I had completely forgotten about that. Anyway, but the things that I were able to focus on this time were the effects and the use of the CSO and the Sing Sync. This was the first. This actually was an experiment for the BBC. They were using a technique called Scene Sync, and whereas I think it was Underworld where they used heavily with CSO. When I say CSO, for those people that don't know what that is, that's green screen or chroma key, as we sometimes call it in the United States. You had to lock a camera down, and you had to have your actors react on another camera, obviously, but you always had to have both cameras locked down because you can have the movement. This was the first story. This actually was one of the first productions in the UK that they used what was called Scene Sync, where they would sync 2 cameras up so that they could move in tandem, so you could move your background and your actors at the same time. And I think that comes off really well in this because it looks dated to today's standards, but when you look at it from the perspective of the 1970s when they're doing this against chroma key, it to me, I'm fascinated by how well they pull that off and how good it looks. And I think the models that they built look incredible, even though they're these little tiny scale models, because they're using the Scene Sync technology. But I think the models looked great.
The underground fortress in particular was really impressive when it rises up out of the sand.
Even the sets within the city itself as well. When they're everything just really, really looks good, and it shines. And I think this was coming into the era of the more brighter tones, and we were coming out of the Hinchcliffe era where everything was a little dark, and even out of even Adams, I think some of that era was still just kind of dark, but now we get into these brighter colors and more shiny sci-fi, and I think they pull it off really well in this one.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this is the effects, particularly more so than the story itself, stand out as superbly done. As far as the story itself, there is, as we kind of pointed out there in Friday Who, there is some familiarity to the story in general because of the trappings of it. I mean, you got the religious sect worshiping a power source underground that's beneath the Planet of the Apes, and then the fact that the crux of the Meglos' plot is to steal the dodecahedron to power a giant weapon. That's the Death Star. I mean, there's so much that's familiar with it, and that's not necessarily to its disadvantage. It just makes it almost, I don't want to say more palatable, but it doesn't knock it down a peg in my standards, but it doesn't raise it up either. It just kind of leaves it in the middle. Anyways.
Because if you're going to steal from the best.
Well, that's right. Planet of the Apes and Star Wars.
I will say, though, that the use of a cactus
why is it a
guy,
sentient cactus?
Well, because the two guys that wrote this were actually comedy writers, and they had a show in I don't know if they were in the East End, but they had a show somewhere in the UK, and one of the producers came and saw the show, and they really liked the guys, and they said, "Hey, we'd like you to write an episode of Doctor Who," and so they jumped at the chance. Their idea was to write it around the sentient cactus. And I think, unfortunately, what happened was I think that the director may have taken the story too seriously, because it's ripe for even more kind of witticism and humor, and I think the humor is still there, but it's subdued and kind of underlined.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't think that the director went with the whimsy that the writers were going for. The writers of this, by the way, are John Flanagan and Andrew McCullough. And as a matter of fact, so much so that they're comedy writers, that the character Lieutenant Brodadak is actually an anagram for bad actor. And there's a special on the DVD of one of the extras. It goes and follows these guys so many years later, 30 years later, and they look back on the story and they talked about it, and they were a little concerned that the guy that was playing, who's actually at the time Frederick Travis, was kind of a renowned actor. He was kind of a serious actor, was well known. And apparently, when they told him what the anagram was, he said, "Oh, this is great." And so the intention of the character was to be kind of over the top and chewing scenery, and so he played it really up. He really played it up. So that comes across. But unfortunately, I think all of that kind of gets overlaid by somebody trying to do a serious Doctor Who story here.
Yeah.
And so I think
it would have been much more enjoyable had it been more campy, a bit more playing up the humor aspect of it.
Suddenly makes a lot more sense with this story.
Yeah.
Looking at it, looking at the cover, I would expect a lot more humor than we got.
Yeah.
I would expect some big fun thing, kind of almost Flash Gordon level fun to it, and no. It doesn't quite reach there.
Well, looking at it in that light, it now very much feels like a holdover from the Douglas Adams era that maybe didn't get produced under that banner.
By the right person, yeah.
Oh, yeah. If it had been done then, I think it would have been done really well, and it would be a lot better received.
Interesting. I want to give a shout-out to the prop makers for putting Christmas tree baubles on top of the guys' hats.
Those outfits looked really familiar to me. Is it just because they were kind of Russian-inspired, or is it... I want to say something from Key to Time had very similar costumes.
Yeah, the one guy had kind of a big fur hat.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Another thing from that behind the scenes documentary. Apparently, these guys were written as space pirates. And so when the writers came to the set to see the progress of what was going on, when they walked in, these guys were actually decked out like
Pirates.
They had pirate hats and eye patches and pirate regalia. And I don't remember, one of the guys said that just because we wrote Space Pirates, we weren't being literal about it. That was just kind of their style. And so apparently the costume department had to throw something else together to make it more spacey. And so this is what they came up with. And I think you're right. I think to me it seemed like, and they didn't say this in there, but it seems to me that it was a reuse from something.
Yeah.
Because they really come across more of a, 18th century Russian kind of look.
Yeah,
here.
it really does.
Or 19th century Russian.
For the same reason you're not allowed to use the word knight at all, because immediately you're going to get guys in armor.
Yes.
Yeah, pirates going to get guys.
Pirates are going to get eye patches and
so. But I think you're right, Keith. It seems it felt like there was some of that was reused, maybe from Ribos Operation.
Yeah,
Had
maybe
some of
that's
that
what
style.
that's the one in particular that I think is very similar. I think Tom does a very good job acting in this as Meglos. I think he comes across as appropriately creepy and otherworldly, and yet still Tom, which was really an interesting vibe.
Which is funny
A
because
completely otherworldly aspect that the Doctor doesn't have.
you can tell Tom must have liked the story because we've commented on how Leisure Hive and Horns of Nimon, Tom seems to be kind of sleepwalking through the role. But this one, which I think is sandwiched between the two, is, or near to those anyway.
Yeah, it's after Leisure Hive.
Is
I think Horns was last.
yeah,
season.
very much more in Tom's favor. He was very much. You could tell he was enjoying the part. The acting came across. So I agree, and I think this must have been one of those scripts that he looked at and he really liked it, and so it also gave him a little bit. He's probably happy with it because it gives him a chance to play both sides because he's able to play the bad guy and the good guy in this as well. So.
Yeah. And K9 comes back, which is always a plus, even though it's
And-
limited use. But
As you pointed out, get all-terrain wheels throughout most of it.
Really moving over some terrain. This
Yeah. Too
which
bad his battery didn't last.
must
Those
have taken
powering those wheels were.
took a big toll on that on the battery usage.
Oh, but it was nice to see some continuity from Leisure Hive and the beginning of that, and them kind of tucking K9 away in the TARDIS, and they just didn't pull him out. No, look, he's okay. There was I really appreciated that aspect of
They're
it.
dealing with the ramifications
Yeah.
of the previous. That being said, I think watching these out of order kind of affects that. And luckily, our memories are well enough to remember where we came out of Leisure Hive. But that
I'll
being
never
said,
forget Leisure Hive, K9 going in the water and dying. Burned in my main.
That being said, it feels like it's another one of those instances where you see K9, they're repairing him, he's come back, they've got some usage out of K9, and then suddenly the battery's depleted again, and you think they really didn't know what to do with K9 in these stories, and they really didn't. It almost comes across like they didn't want to use K9 in these stories, is what it comes across as. So,
Well, and you even get the reference earlier in the episode while they're fixing him of, oh yeah, I can fix his battery, but then he never does.
Yeah.
In this story.
Right.
Well, why even mention that if that's not going to...
Well, because I think that was the intent. I think the intent was to use K9 more, but I think they just had so many problems with the mechanics and the servos of it that it just became a hindrance to a lot of the directors, and so they figured out ways to write K9 in stories. So.
And some writers just didn't like him, so they wrote him out.
That happened as well.
I don't understand those people. I mean, other than the K9 is almost as big a crutch as the sonic screwdriver. I mean,
at least that when the K9 as a crutch makes, and the way they use him as a crutch makes more sense than the sonic screwdriver.
Yeah.
He at least has multi-functions instead of just sonic.
Yeah. Oh no, I've been locked in a cell. Dog whistle. Thanks for letting me out, K9. I appreciate that. K9's very much a product of the capture and escape mode of Doctor Who.
The funny thing is that it's never bothered me.
Nope.
Oh no,
never bothered me
it's because he's got personality.
Yeah.
If he were just a tool instead of an actual character, it would be different.
Yeah, that's true.
If he were a Sonic, or if he pulled out a small little dog to do on the door out of his coat, it would be a completely different thing.
That would be a complete different thing if he pulled a small little dog out of his coat.
He'd be Christopher Walken. I brought kittens.
I somehow pictured the Doctor running around with a little Paris Hilton purse with a little canine head sticking out.
It's a man bag.
Man bag, yeah. European carry-all.
Yeah. So
One thing with this story, I do kind of wish Romana had gotten more to do, just because she is such a strong character that she kind of gets relegated to the back. I mean, she spends an entire episode
Walking in circles.
Yeah, taking pirates around the jungle and getting, granted, doing it smartly to get them trapped by the plants, but it's still kind of like, really, you're going to waste an entire episode doing that?
Right.
Oh, all right.
I didn't feel like it was a waste, because I think it was enough time to set up what Meglos was doing in one area of the story and what the Doctor was doing in another area of the story. I just really felt like it was kind of a way to allow that to play out before bringing Romana in later. And
yeah, I guess having Romana
Because
and
if
the
Romana-
Doctor doing that thing,
Well-
it would have resolved the thing too quickly.
true, and if exactly, if Romana had showed up soon enough, then the mistaken identity thing would have gone away
Yeah,
too
that's
soon.
true.
And so I think that it works for the plot. You're right; she does kind of seem to be relegated to a pointless.
The most
Goose chase.
Romana has ever been relegated that I can think of to the top of my head, it feels like.
Well, yeah, but you got to remember too. She just came off a story where she was very heavily used
That's
in Leisure
true.
Hive, so
Yeah.
it wouldn't have seemed that way so much. Probably to watch these in order.
yeah,
I'm trying to think of the other Romana stories, and I don't remember one where I
Horns of
felt like,
Daimon, she's got quite a bit to do.
yeah,
The E-Space trilogy, probably the first E-Space trilogy.
the next one, which would be Full Circle.
Thank you. Full Circle, I think she had a lot to do. State of Decay. Yeah, no, I think it's pretty equal throughout the rest of her tenure.
Trying to remember Nightmare of Eden. How much she had to do on that one. Yeah, but... So I guess
Destiny of the
just
Daleks,
having this one instance where she is kind of more relegated just stands out to me even more so. Even though, while it does serve this purpose to the plot, it doesn't serve the character very well.
That's true.
you had made the comment on Friday Night Hoogland that maybe we should do an episode on doppelgangers, and I think
You responded to, yeah, I don't know why I hadn't thought of it, because there's a lot of that.
there's a lot of that. I also thought that maybe we could do one on time loops, because I'd kind of forgotten that aspect. I don't know why. As soon as the Doctor tripped, I went, oh, yeah, that's this one. And
What do they call it? A chronic...
chronic hysterectomy.
I thought he kept saying chronic hysterectomy.
Let's see if I can find it in...
But I remember watching that over and over and over again and thinking, wow, that would really suck. Because even I'm starting to get annoyed. As a kid, I thought that. And now watching it, I'm like, I'd really like to see Peter Capaldi get stuck in a time loop. Can we bring back some element of this kind of... And I didn't realize that they did it so much. I mean, because coming off the Key to Time, that we get a repeating loop that other people are stuck in. And
Isn't the 12th Doctor already stuck in a time loop in the one where he's trapped in the...
oh, yeah.
Heavens, Hellbent.
Hellbent.
Yeah. That's the biggest time loop of them all.
Okay.
Billions of years
I guess
spent
it's
in there.
not exactly a time loop, because time is running linear. It's his.
He's not even looping,
but
because
still,
he's...
it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
It's a copy every time,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's kind of the same thing.
Irony comes back to bite me again.
Chronic Hysterius.
Hysterius, that's what it was, yeah. I kept thinking they were saying chronic hysterectomy. All right, what else?
You're right. You're so right now. The whole time loop thing is a joke. How they get out of it, it's a joke. I'm just now. I'm looking at this episode in an entirely new light. Looking at this thing, if it's a comedy, because let's just do what we were doing, and that'll break it. Oh yes, waggle his tail.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I couldn't remember.
How did I miss this? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, now you'll have to rewatch it.
I will have to rewatch it. That way.
Even more than you already did.
I think I do. I think I appreciate it a lot more. I kind of wish it had been made as a comedy.
Well, Well, again, I think the underlying comedy is still there. It's just, unfortunately, it's subdued by trying to be a little too serious with it as well. So maybe that's what people don't like about it, is it was produced in the wrong light. It was directed and created in the wrong sense of how it was written. So that might be why people don't like it. I think if it was a little more overt with the comedy, less subversive with the comedy, then people might be more accepting of a giant sentient cactus. So there's that.
I think so.
And here's the weird thing, honestly. That's the least problematic part of the story.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Who's the bad guy? Giant cactus. All right. It's Doctor Who.
Well, because he's only a giant cactus for a little bit. That's why it works decently well, is because he does merge with that random human that they picked up for no reason.
Don't you think that's the most problematic?
No.
You don't think that's the most... What's the most problematic?
It's Doctor Who. I can accept that very easily.
Well, what's the most problematic then?
The most problematic, I think, is well, the tone, now that I know that it was supposed to be a comedy. I think pacing, it's a little off, because you do get a whole episode where, I mean, yeah, you're right, it was done for a reason, but you do get a whole episode with we're wandering around in the jungle and we're setting up the doppelganger and the blah, 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 blah. And then
but even
it kind of rushes to that conclusion
even in
once
that
we get
episode,
to the fourth
even
part.
in that episode, it's there's a lot going on with Meglos and the Doctor still. Though.
Yeah.
You don't cut away to Ramona very often.
No, you don't.
There's not a lot of meandering in that episode. I think the most problematic thing about it, if we're going to put a point of finger on it, is the complete lack of any sort of climactic resolution at the end. We just cut away to the Dr. Romano saying, "Okay, everything's fixed, goodbye," and leaving at the end. And
it's
I
not
thought,
even that,
because
it's I'm sure you'll do fine on the surface.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not even I fixed everything. You're screwed. Bye.
It was
good luck fending off the carnivorous plants.
Every time that Big Finish does this from now on, I'm going to call it a Meglos moment, because that's where they got it from.
Yeah,
that is exactly
it really
where they got
is.
it from.
So yes, those are problems that I mean, the plot, when you break the plot down, doesn't really make a lot of sense. So the dodecahedron's going to power this gigantic super laser weapon that Meglos has either appropriated or taken over his headquarters. But the dodecahedron's on another planet, barely providing enough power for the people of this underground city to... Why? How did it get there? Was it supposed to have started off there? There's so much that's not explained.
There you go again, though. You're always looking for a backstory in the simplest of stories, and you got to quit doing that. Every time, no, seriously, every time you come to a story, you go, "I didn't know enough about this. What coming into it?" I'm sorry. Sometimes with Doctor Who, and you'd think you'd know this by now.
You think
sometimes
I would?
With Doctor Who, you just got to you get thrown in. You're just like the Doctor. You get thrown in, although the Doctor had been there before, but. You're just like the Doctor and the companion. You get thrown into the situation as it is. You don't get all that backstory, and there's not enough time to do all of that.
No, I get that part of it. I mean, there's things you have to sacrifice.
When you make that complaint for a novel, I think it's a genuine concern. When you make that point for a story and on a television series, I think that's unfair. I think that's very unfair. You've just got to take the acceptance of the fact that they're this technology is what they worship, and it runs their planet. It's barely running their planet. Okay, fine. Let's just go from there.
I agree. I think there are definitely. I can accept a giant talking cactus. I cannot accept.
I'm at fault. I asked you for the problems. I shouldn't have gone there.
I'm just saying.
I mean, to some extent, I do have to agree with Sean, because I felt like the fact that they had this dodecahedron and it was powering their planet, I was okay with. Mm-hmm. It was why Meglos knew about it, how he knew about it, why he wanted to go get it. All of Megalos's
who put him in that pot
motivations, I could have used more of.
It sounded like it was pretty common knowledge, because even the pirates knew that they had.
Oh, okay. I must have missed that part.
Yeah, they even knew. But they weren't surprised by it. In fact, Meglos was asking them about it. They were pretty much corroborating their story about it. So,
I guess I just needed more motivations for Meglos.
Well, no, I that's fine. If you both felt that way, then maybe there's something there. But
I needed more.
Maybe it comes from us not having seen it, not just you too.
Well, that could be
some of the subtle nuances that might be there.
But I didn't get all of that background either, but I didn't care any of the 3 or 4 times I've seen it. So.
You just asked me to elaborate on why the cactus was not the biggest problem.
I know. I opened that can of worms.
That is a Okay.
I have to say, I thought the
cannot
practice
close that
effects
can of
and
worms
the
now.
prosthetics was, I was pretty impressed by
No
them.
amount
Yeah.
of tinfoil will put those worms back in that can.
They're too wiggly.
But yeah, I have zero problem with it being a talking cactus. That's my Doctor Who acceptance for this episode. Yeah, all right. Talking cactus, why not?
I need to look at the...
But the moon is an egg is an issue?
No, I'm the one that was all right with that.
he was fine.
That's
You,
right,
you and
that's
I that had a
right.
problem with the moon being an egg.
Sure.
I'm going to look at the discontinuity guide when I get home and see what they thought of it, because a lot of times they're in line. Paul Cornell and his crew that wrote that, a lot of times they're in line more with what that fandom thinks. In fact, I sometimes think these people that write books about episodes of Doctor Who sort of maybe soil fandom in a way. They it becomes
tone.
they set the tone for what fandom,
Well, and
fandom
especially
thinks.
for some of those who read those books before they ever actually got to see the episodes.
Exactly. And so I kind of wonder if maybe we're the anti-discontinuity guide, because a lot of times
That's
we come to
true.
these stories and go, I don't know what fans don't like about this. So I don't know.
Or sometimes we go, why do fans like this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, talents.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
It's about time to rewatch Talons and see if I still hate it. I know I will, but
Any final notes on this, or do we pretty much summarize it? I think we all enjoyed it. I think we can simply say we just all enjoyed it. So. All right, what do we got? I'm just going to set him up really badly here. What do we got coming up on the schedule, Sean?
we don't know. If you've been following along through the drama that is Power of the Daleks being released, we planned on doing it for Friday Night Who, and then doing you a little something, and then coming back for Friday Night Who and finishing it up, and then reviewing it. And we won't be able to do that because it's going to be released weekly by BBC America. We're still hopeful that maybe we can get a copy, but I don't know for sure it's not going to happen. So I think we're going to have to bump it, and I'm not quite sure till when. So if we do, should we just bump up Web of Fear and do that whole chunk, and we'll just push everything back? Is that what makes the most sense to do it?
You know what? Maybe we just don't decide now on the show. Maybe we discuss this and we put out something on the website and let everybody catch up that way.
Catch us on the website. We'll figure it out, and we'll let you know.
Let's do that.
We don't know what we're going to do next week. Just come back.
Keith, if people want to send feedback, where can they do that?
They can go to our website also and click on the Send Us Feedback tab and fill out that form, or you can send it directly to feedback@travelingthevortex.com. You can also reach out to us. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the usual social media. Just search for Traveling the Vortex and you'll find us.
Sean, how can people support us on Patreon?
Well, they can go to our website, and there's a Support Us on Patreon button, and they can click that and give us all their money. Which all of it goes right back into this podcast, and we use it to pay for server space and things of that nature, so we can continue to not know what we're going to bring you the following week.
It doesn't go into scheduling, obviously.
No, it does not. Maybe you should go into lobbying. Don't release these an episode at a time. But
And of course, if you're
And we-
supporting us on Patreon, we thank you very much.
that
for
part, that was the important one. Words.
Is there anything else before my voice starts to fail me again? All right, if that's good enough for this week, until next week, please forgive all my sniffles and coughs this week. I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
Thanks for
Thanks for
listening.
listening.
I was trying to think of something that I could ask you to recite.
4 score.
Yeah, Gettysburg Address. Do that.
Our forefathers.
Wish for the Nile. Say, I want the Nile.
I went to that.
No way.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.